Hey everybody, it's Anthony from Gravitee. In this video, we're going to do a brief demonstration of the core capabilities of the Kafka Gateway as part of our launch of Gravitee APIM 4.6. There's going to be quite a bit more demonstrations and content coming in the coming days for the Gravitee Kafka Gateway. We wanted to include a brief introduction as part of our release. Some of the core functionality and features of the Gravitee Kafka Gateway are things we're going to take a quick look at here. You can change the security protocol between clients and the brokers in the cluster. So clients can talk to the gateway over SASL SSL with SASL plain or OAuth bearer or any number of different the SASL mechanisms. But then when you're talking to the actual physical cluster from the proxy to the cluster, you can use a different authentication method and mediate the authentication between the front and the actual cluster itself. You can also very easily define ACLs and evolve them at the proxy layer, which allows you to, say, for example, define based on who someone is or what topic they're talking to. You might allow consuming but not producing based on who the client is. You can also rename topics between the client and the broker. So you can make it look like on the client side that the topic is named one thing, and then on the broker, it's actually named another thing. And then on top of that, you can use the Gravitee developer portal to publish documentation and actually manage access to the broker through the proxy via the developer portal. We'll just take a quick look at that in this video. So I'm going to go ahead and transition over to my Gravitee console where I've configured a demonstration API here. And what this API is going to be doing is talking to a Kafka cluster, and that Kafka cluster, we have a UI for it here on the Gravitee side. And you can see if we look at the topics, there's a whole list of topics here. There's quite a bit of topics in this cluster here. But maybe we want the person talking to this cluster to only have access to one topic. Well, the way we can do that is by providing a policy on the topic that is the Kafka ACL topic, Kafka ACL policy. And when we do that, we might be able to say, okay, well, we only want to show topics that have the name Anthony. We might only want the person talking to this topic to be able to describe it and read it, meaning get data from, but not actually produce data to it. And we might want to allow them to do things with consumer groups, and we can configure that separately. And you can create a whole long list of ACLs here and evolve them very quickly, save them, deploy them, and so on. Now, with this API proxy, this is really a Kafka API. It's API management on top of Kafka. When you look at the entry points, you define a host on top of your proxy here, where you can then use this to expose multiple different proxies through the same gateway. So in this case, I've just called this the core demo host or API definition. And then on the client side, I've configured an API key plan here, which requires that users to be able to talk to this proxy have a valid credential. And you can add an OAuth plan, a JOT plan, and these all correlate directly with Kafka API configurations. And then I can go ahead and publish this. I can publish documentation here. I've added a home page and a documentation page here, which is just an async API page, and actually publish this to the developer portal. So you can have someone come into the developer portal where you have all of your APIs, not just Kafka, but HTTP proxies, protocol mediation of HTTP on top of Kafka or MQTT or Solus. And you can publish those APIs here. And so in this case, I've got this example demonstration API here. I can click Learn More. I can see documentation about my API, about this proxy. And as a client, I might be coming from the point of view of someone who has never used an API, but I know how to use Kafka. So I can see all this information here. I'm not necessarily being told this is an API necessarily. I can see my async API specification here, and I can look at my subscriptions. I've gone ahead and already created one, but I could go ahead and go through the self-service subscription flow here to actually get that credential. And then when I come in here, I can see the a nice uniquely generated Kafka client configuration that I can just copy paste here. And in this case, for example, I have, because this is an API key plan, this is matching directly to SASL SSL with SASL mechanism plain as the security framework. And the API key is actually my password for the SASL plain. So I can go ahead and copy that information. I've gone ahead and already done that and use that on the client side. So let's take a quick look at that. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up my terminal here, and I'll go ahead and make this a little bigger. And when I do that, I'll see that I can go ahead and put that in a client properties file. So if I'd go ahead and say, like, in this case, I've got this already set up in an API key in a properties file. I've got my security protocol, SASL SSL, SASL mechanism plain, and then this Jazz configuration for my client that I've already configured through the developer portal. Now that I've shown my client properties, I can go ahead and look at the topics in here. And you might recall from the cluster that we were just looking at that there's quite a few topics here in this cluster. Now, if I go ahead and run a list topics command, which I can do using the regular Kafka client library. So I can just run, let's see, I think I have it pulled up here previously. Yeah, so I give it the Kafka console, let's do the list topics instead. If I give it the Kafka topics list, I give it the bootstrap server of my proxy here. So this is the Gravitee Kafka Gateway. And then I give it my properties file here that has my properties here. When I do this and run it, what we'll see is that we only see one topic, the Anthony topic, because we defined an ACL that says this is the only topic that you can see. Further, we've actually gone ahead and secured this, because if I go ahead and make a small edit to my properties file and say remove the 9 at the end here, let's not do that. Let's go here and video Vim. Sorry, everybody. Okay, now if I go ahead and run this again, we'll see that we get an error that says we have an invalid username in our credentials. So let's go ahead and change that back. I'm going to add a 9 here at the end. Okay, so now let's run that list command again and see that everything works again. Now, from there, we know that if we go back and look at our ACLs on the Kafka topic, so let's come over to our policy here and look at the ACL. We've said that for topic Anthony, we can describe it and read it, but we can't write to it. So let's go ahead and run a consumer. So let's see where we're at here. Let's get that guy back up. There we go. So in this case, we've got the Kafka console consumer bootstrap server giving us that same proxy here. We say the topic we want to consume from is Anthony, and that this is our properties file. So let's go ahead and run that, and we'll see that we're connected. Now, if we go back over to our UI here, and we look at that topic, Anthony, and we go ahead and produce a message in the UI, we could, of course, do this through the proxy, but for the purpose of the demo, we can see here it says, hello from demo. Great. Now let's go ahead and try to run the same command with the producer. So in that case, we're going to go ahead and say Kafka console producer, and we'll change this here to the producer config, and then we'll change this to Kafka console producer. Okay, now the producer's open from demo. We'll run that, and we'll go ahead and see an error saying, hey, you can't do that because you're not authorized to do that with this ACL. So that's an example of how you can use ACLs in the Gravitee Kafka Gateway to limit who can do what with what topics and then what resources, and you can make it dynamic. So you can have different users with different options based on who they are. So stay tuned for a lot more information from Gravitee on the Gravitee Kafka Gateway, and hope that this spiked your interest in what we're doing. Thank you.